So this is 3.4, and the goal for this lesson is that by the end of it, you should be able to understand what the distributive property means and also how to apply it in the real world. So you should have your notes out in front of you. These were given out in class, so we're going to go through them together. So first blank is going to be distributive. So the distributive property is the one that was the mystery one that was on that activity that you did last week with your groups. So the distributive property states that to multiply a sum or difference by a number, what you would do is multiply both numbers of the sum or difference by the number on the outside of the parentheses. So it looks better when you actually have an example. So let's look at the example. So say you're multiplying 5 times 7 plus 8. So the parentheses, again, a number next to parentheses means multiply. So this is saying 5 times 7 plus 8. So we are multiplying a whole number by a sum this time. So all you do is you multiply that outside number, the 5, by every number on the inside of the parentheses. So that's shown here. So I did 5 times 7 here, 5 times 8 here, and then because there's a plus sign, you add the two answers together. So that becomes 35 plus 40, which equals 75. So this seems kind of like a weird property to have, but the reason why it's really useful is because you can actually, if you master it, you can multiply single digit by double digit numbers. You can do that math in your head now without actually having to write it down. So here's an example of how you would do that. I'm going to show you it on paper, but then eventually if you master it, you could do it in your head. So for example, 8 times 54 can be written as a product of a sum. The single digit number goes on the outside of the parentheses, and you break up the double digit number by place value. So 54 would be 50 plus 4. Then you're going to multiply that outside number, in this case 8, by everything on the inside of the parentheses. So I wrote 8 times 50 right here, and then 8 times 4. And then the plus sign means you add the two answers together. So that's 400 plus 32, so 432. So as I mentioned before, you always break up the double digit number by place value. Makes it way easier. So let's try these. Before we even do the distributive property, I wanted to see if you can actually break up a number by place value. So I did the first one for you. So 98 is the same thing as 90 plus 8. So I want you to pause the video and break these up by place value. And then when you're done, press play and see what we did. So for 24, place values would be 20 plus 4. 20 is your tens place, 4 is your ones. 75 is 70 plus 5. 41 would be 40 plus 1. So you're just breaking it up by place value. That is not doing the distributive property. I'm just practicing having you split them up so then you can apply it with the distributive property. So that's what we're going to do next. So let's say we have 7 times 24. Instead of doing regular multiplication, we're going to try it with the distributive property. So your single digit number goes on the outside of the parentheses. 24 would be 20 plus 4. You're now going to multiply that outside number, in this case 7, by both numbers on the inside. So I wrote that here, 7 times 20, that's the first digit, and then 7 times 4. You do out your order of operations, that's 140 plus 28, which equals 168. This also works for algebraic expressions. If you remember from a couple videos ago, algebraic expressions are math problems that have variables in them. You can only do this though if the problem is already set up for you, which actually makes it a lot easier. So let's say we have the example 7 times x plus 5. We're going to do the same thing. Multiply that outside number, in this case 7, by everything on the inside. So 7 times x is just 7 times x. 7 times 5, solve what you can. 7 times x is 7x. 7 times 5 is 35. Put the plus sign between them. At this step, that is normally where you would add the two numbers together, but now we have an algebraic expression, so we have a variable. So you cannot add coefficients with constants. So that's actually your final answer. I think these are actually way easier. So you try this one. Multiply 3 times y, multiply 3 times 2, and put the plus sign in the middle. So pause the video, try it, and then press play to see how you did. So when I do this, 3 times y is 3y, 3 times 2 is 6, and then you just bring down the plus sign. So 3y plus 6 is your final answer. You can't add the 6 and the 3 because one is a coefficient and one is a constant, and you can't add coefficients and constants. So that would be it. Okay, so sometimes you have multiple numbers on the inside of the parentheses, like the one I did here. So the same exact thing is you're literally just going to multiply that outside number by everything on the inside again. So 4 times x is 4 times x, 4 times 5 is 20, 4 times 4 is 16, add them together. Or you could add the two numbers together like I actually did here. So 5 plus 4 is 9. So I can rewrite the problem to 4 times x plus 9, which I did here by adding the constants together because you're allowed to do that. So then I just did 4 times x is 4 times x, 4 times 9 is 4 times 9, multiply it out, you get 4x plus 36. Okay, so try this one, pause the video, try it out, and then press play to see how you did. So for this one, I have 5 times 4, which is 20. Bring down my plus sign. 5 times w is 5w. Bring down the next plus sign. 5 times 8 is 40. I want to simplify this a little bit. You are allowed to add constants. So I can remember that commutative rule where you could switch the order around. So I can add 20 and 40 together. So I'm going to get 5w plus 60. 40 plus 20. Okay, so now I'm going to have you end this video and watch the next one where we're doing some of the examples in the textbook.